And it was interesting that he signal. It's worth saying that he is one of the stars, but the star is undoubtedly Florence Pugh,
yeah.
and she is the woman on the poster, and it's her experience in the breakup. And I've got a couple of emails on it, but do you want to? Have you said your thing? You want to?
No. I'm just going to say my thing. So okay, so
here's Mark's thing.
Thank you.
Midsummer.
So the first thing to say is, I think so. The story, just in case you missed the interview before, is essentially after. I mean, I was, as everyone knows, I was very disappointed by Hereditary because I thought it had a really brilliant first half and then an increasingly silly second half, which really bothered me. I know that Robbie Collin had felt very differently, and we had a sort of long discussion about that, but that was my position on it. I think that Ari Aster, I've been saying Ari Aster, but Will Poulter's saying Ari Aster, is much more consistent in Midsommar. So it stars Florence Pugh, who is brilliant in everything I've seen her in. I mean, absolutely everything I've seen her in. She was great in Lady Macbeth. She's brilliant in The Falling. She's terrific in this. So she plays Dani, who is this anxiety-ridden young woman who is haunted by a family tragedy in the very sort of first movement of the film. And essentially, she's having a relationship with Jack Rayner, who plays Christian, who is on the point of breaking up with her, but can't break up with her because he feels responsible for her because she seems to be in a state that's emotionally fragile because of this thing that's happened with the family. And as I was saying before, if you look at the first 10 minutes of the film, right from the kind of opening, theatrical thing, it sort of lays out the whole area of the film before it. Anyway, he is going to go off with some of his friends to this Midsommar festival in Sweden, which they think is going to be great fun. But then it turns out that she's going to come with. And the friends don't really want her to. And Will Poulter's character particularly doesn't want, because he's kind of vacuous and he's the flippant character who says all the nasty stuff that everybody else is kind of thinking. But she does go along. They're told it's 9 days of pageantry, special ceremonies and dressing up, like theatre, which is crucial. This particular ceremony is happening, it's like once every 90 years, a once in a lifetime thing, but cultural. They get there, and what they're immediately sort of met with is this bright, sunny people in flowery dresses and headdresses wibbling around with these ancient pagan ceremonies, which already that this Edenic idyll is going to go badly wrong, because you know the Wicker Man, and because you know where these kind of stories lead, that things are it's
an Ari Aster
yes
film.
It's not all going to be jolly stuff. But what's interesting is this. Firstly, I think this is much more of a psychological thriller than it is a fright fest. I mean, it does owe a great debt to Wicker Man, and incidentally, Wicker Man kind of already had a sort of Swedish Euro twist put on it recently by that movie Ritual. There is nothing in Midsommar that has the horror impact of the moment when Edward Woodward comes over the brow of the hill in Wicker Man, in the most famous sequence from Wicker Man. But that's because it's not a horror film. What it is it's a film about somebody who is in the process of being torn apart by her guilt about her family and a breaking relationship, being in a situation that somehow seems to externally mirror what's happening to her internally. So, for example, the film starts with a family crisis. When they get to the festival, there is a lot of talk about, we are a family, these are my family. There's a line early on when she says it's a sister issue, or somebody says it's a sister issue because she's trying to contact her sister on the telephone. When they're in the festival, she meets these women who talk to her. So they talk about being sisters. They talk about the commune, raising children, all sorts of stuff. So in fact, there are moments in it, like if you've seen in the trailer, there seems to be a moment when Florence Pugh's character is screaming and these other women are screaming back at her. And that kind of reminded me of things like Instant Enlightenment, including VAT, which is I think it was a play for the day in the 1970s.
Reminded you what?
It was called Instant Enlightenment, including VAT. And it was one of those things about those things when you go to one of those workshops that are all to do with kind of rebirthing and finding out and actually what they end up is you become part of a cult. They take all your money away from you. And it was a very sort of cynical and very sharp and actually I think quite horrifying portrayal of that world. And there is something of that in inverted commas horror of Midsommar. It is also true that there are moments in Midsommar that clearly relate to the horror genre. When I asked you about it, because I know that you're not a big fan of horror films, correct, you said there were things in it that you just had to kind of switch off from.
There's some gore where I looked away and I could tell what was coming. But Here's the thing, which is underlining what you are saying and adding italics.
Oh, great.
I wasn't scared.
Fine, because I don't think
that's me not being scared.
Yeah, and that says a lot because if you're not scared and you're a total scaredy cat,
I am.
What it tells you is it's actually not a horror film. What it is it's a drama about Florence Pugh's character, and of course, I mean, this is why I said that when Ari Aster says it's a breakup movie, it's so obviously a breakup movie that it almost doesn't even need to be said. And so,
except when you say that has certain connotations, and it is horrific.
Oh yes, no, and yeah, in the same way that breakups can be horrific, it is basically an intense psychodrama in which what's happening to her internally is then mirrored externally, and as also, I mean. That thing about whether or not it has comedy elements. I mean, it does have comedy elements, not only in slightly comedic characters like the character that Will Poulter plays, which do produce laughs. And there are jokes in the film. There are actual laugh lines in the film. But also because the whole film has a kind of shaggy dog story logic to it. That if you understand that, the last shot of the film tells you that what we're arriving at is almost a punchline. Now, I think there are flaws. I think that Ari Aster's very best work. It's interesting that his short films were really where I think that the germ of all this stuff comes from. If you look at his short films, you can see where the stuff about families, about relationships comes from. And I think that he does have a tendency to overstretch some things. So I think that Midsommar. There are certain longueurs in the last act of it. So I don't think it's dramatically, structurally perfect, but I think it's such a step up from Hereditary in that it is a single arc. It is not a broken back film. It is a film that has an internal logic that I was always sort of always involved in. And I thought the evocation of the world into which they go, albeit familiar, because if as I said, the Wicker Man stuff everyone knows about, it is a world that you absolutely believe in, and it is really aided by brilliant performances. I mean, really, really brilliant performances, and by Florence Pugh and by Will Poulter and by Jack Rayner, and also by, I think, terrific score by Bobby Krilich as the Haxon Cloak. And the score, which kind of starts somewhere in Paul Giovanni's folk-influenced songs from The Wicker Man, and then goes off into something kind of weirdly scratchy and atonal. And what I liked about the score was that it does that thing about being exegetic and diegetic, that sometimes the music sometimes the music is generated from within the scene. You actually see people playing the instruments, and sometimes it's incidental music placed on top of the scene, and sometimes you can't tell.
And there isn't a melody to be had.
Oh, there's some catchy tunes.
No, I really don't think that there are. No. You won't come out whistling any particular sing-along hit.
Oh, really?
No, I don't think so. I would. I was surprised because I'd been told that it would be so scary. You know, that the last half hour I would, because it's 2.5 hours, that the last half hour I would really struggle, and I didn't. And I think,
I think that you were misled.
Yes, well, I clearly was misled, but also the other kind of question. I mean, the performances are. I entirely agree with everything you said. The performances, particularly Florence Pugh, who has to go through an awful lot in this movie, is
and quite often in very unforgiving extended takes. There are a lot of single takes in the film, which will last minutes without cutaways, in which it's all playing off her reaction to what's happening or her conversations. Also, that thing about, I ended up admiring things like the construction of we open in darkness in winter, we move to light in summer, and yet actually there is light within the darkness and there is darkness within the light. The whole thing about it all takes place in sunshine. No, it doesn't. It takes place in an interplay between light and dark, between interior and exterior.
And there's only so many scary moments you can have if you're an old guy in a white flowing cloak.
Yeah,
that's one point. Also, there is a one of the kind of look away moments. If you're a wuss like me, there was a look away moment that happened, and I thought, okay, well, after this look away moment, everyone in their party would just go, okay, well, we're out of here.
We're out of here.
But they don't, and I know people don't behave logically, but I think they're not going to stick around. They're seeing that it's not Cropredy. They might have expected
it's not
it to be.
Cropredy.
Fairport Convention are not about to.
That should be the tagline. Midsommar it's not crop ready.
But it should be.
But interestingly enough, there's another link there, which is to 2000 Maniacs, which is, the great, well, it's not great, it's a gore film, which is one of those, because there is a fairly strong heritage of festival gore movies in which people go, oh, we're going off to a festival, it'll all be great. And then it turns up to be, something really horrible. And in fact, there was a very specific moment in Midsommar in which I was reminded of Herschel Gordon Lewis. And also, that Ari Aster knows that that's what he's referring to.
I don't know what that means.
Well, that Wizard of Gore, specifically 2000 Maniacs.
Right. Okay, I haven't seen that, and I don't know who that guy is.
No, okay.
But I'm trying to follow. I am trying to follow.
Blood Feast. Okay.
No, that's not crop ready either.
No.
Which is, of course, the Fairport Convention
That
Festival,
is an absolutely brilliant tagline. Midsommar, it's not crop ready.
Rue in Dublin, a data architect. My brother and I went to a screening of Midsommar on Wednesday in Cineworld in Dublin, expecting a horror film for the ages. We came out entertained, though not quite in the way we'd expected. Midsommar's aim is to perplex rather than petrify the audience, more of a black comedy than an outright horror. It reminded me a lot of Mother, except this film was actually quite good. Midsommar looks beautiful. The long, over-the-shoulder tracking shots bring you into the story like you're an unspoken character, and the soundtrack is simply incredible. Always ominous, rarely frightening, constantly funny. It easily passes the 10 laugh test. And even though you worry for the characters, the weirdness happening around them to them is always a source of humour. I suspect how Florence Pugh's character Danny deals with grief and her struggle for dignity, peace, love and purpose will strike a note with pretty much everyone who watches it. It certainly did with me. Shout out to the rare, respectful, totally code-compliant horror audience who would rather spend 2.5 hours on a sunny Wednesday evening in a dark cinema than in a beer garden. Also, shout out to my fiancée, who will accompany me to see the film again, as I suspect it will almost reward a repeat viewing. Thank you, Rue, from Dublin.
Yes.
Midsommar, it's Certificate 18. What else is out?